remarks at the No Money for Terror G7 meeting on Monday.
Crushing the threat of terrorism compels all of you to step up and join us in rooting out financing that sustains it, from shell companies that are embedded within Europe to shadow banking networks that lurk across the Middle East and drug cartels across the Western Hemisphere.
Yes, Iran is the target of the sanctions, but Bessent made clear that the gathered nations were the target of his message.
So if we are serious about no money for terror, then there must also be no room for excuses.
Look at what he targeted. Shell companies in Europe, shadow banking networks, and drug cartels. That is a description of the City of London's offshore empire and its narco-terrorist operations.
Electronic music.
But there's an even bigger story that ties this all together. Earlier in May, the White House released its counterterrorism strategy, and it dropped a bombshell about the Muslim Brotherhood. And when you understand what that means, you'll understand why London is shaking right now. But if you don't go any further than looking at the mullahs and the IRGC, or if you're panicking about Sharia law coming to a town near you, you are going to miss the hand behind terrorism, dirty money, and perpetual war. I'm Susan Kokinda. For decades, I've tracked how the British Empire uses irregular warfare in the form of drugs and terrorism to keep nations and populations in line. Well, they've met their match in Donald Trump, and if you want to see how this fight unfolds, hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons. So this is what I'm going to talk about today. First, I'm going to look at what Scott Bessent said at the G7 finance ministers meeting and the pedigree of some of the companies that are being targeted by Treasury. Second, why the new counterterrorism strategy, which singles out the Muslim Brotherhood, puts London in the crosshairs. And third, how Bessent's idea of no room for excuses is being finally applied to shutting down Dope Incorporated. So no room for excuses. That's what Bessent told the finance ministers in Paris. And the addresses on Treasury's sanctions list tells you exactly where the excuses have been coming from. As Bessent was delivering those remarks, Treasury rolled out a fresh round of designations against Iran's oil and proliferation networks. The press releases tell you it's about Iran, but the addresses do tell you something else. So pull up the designations from the Office of Foreign Assets Control. Go back from January through yesterday and read the fine print. They do not all lead back to Tehran. Many of them lead to London. Here is the Muslim Brotherhood as the root of all modern Islamist terrorism. Well, if it's the root, who planted the seed? After decades of sponsoring and protecting various radical Islamic fundamentalist figures, British intelligence settled on the Muslim Brotherhood back in 1928 in Ismailia, Egypt. That's where the British Suez Canal Company and the British military were headquartered. The British Suez Canal Company helped the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood build the mosque, which became its base of operations. And from then on, the Muslim Brotherhood was used by British intelligence and often their little brothers in American intelligence against nationalist movements throughout the Mideast. All of this to protect the empire's economic and strategic position. Now, if you want to dive into the history of this, check out either or both of these two books, Robert Dreyfuss's Devil's Game or Mark Curtis's Secret Affairs. Both are extensively researched and documented, but Curtis's background makes his especially interesting. He's a former research fellow at the Empire's Chatham House, and he researched his book based on British government records and declassified documents. And using that material, he shows, in particular, direct British government ties to the Egyptian, Lebanese, and Jordanian branches of the Brotherhood. Guess what 3 branches have been specifically designated by the Trump administration under the Foreign Terrorist Organization provision? Here's what the report says. That is why he, the president, took the historic step of issuing an executive order that declared the original Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood chapter, along with the Jordanian and Lebanese chapters, as foreign terrorist organizations, soon to be followed by others. Those 3 chapters Trump designated, Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon. are the exact same three organizations that appear in the British government's own declassified Foreign Office files as British operational assets, built, funded, and deployed by London. And here's the part that closes the loop. When Curtis filed Freedom of Information requests for details on the Foreign Office's more recent contacts with the Brotherhood, meetings that the British media is not going to report, the Foreign Office refused to release them, citing the public interest. Well, it's in their interest, not yours, because London built the network, it used the network, and it is still actively concealing what it is doing with the network today. So whether it's financial flows or whether it's these networks themselves, that is what Bessent is targeting. That is what Trump is targeting when the counterterrorism strategy says crush the Brotherhood everywhere it operates. The arrow points at one address, London. Now, remember, Scott Bessent singled out shell companies, shadow banking networks, and drug cartels across the Western Hemisphere. When Bessent says there must be no room for excuses, he's driving home a point. We are finally and actually waging war on the cartels because we're not afraid to go after the imperial financial networks that have run drugs going back to Britain's opium wars. And it is a war. The May National Drug Control Strategy said this. Over the past 5 years, nearly 500,000 Americans have been killed by drug overdosing and poisoning. More than the combined American military losses of World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. So the administration is treating it as a war. And in the last few weeks alone, there have been some significant battles won. The cartels have taken 3 hits. Boom number 1, Tren de Aragua. Last week, the first member of a foreign terrorist organization ever extradited from Latin America on terrorism charges landed in Houston. The Colombian government handed him over. The country that for decades slow-walked extraditions to the United States just delivered a TDA leader to face federal terror prosecution. That's what happens when sovereignty actually means something. Boom number 2. May 18th, a federal grand jury in Puerto Rico handed down 23 indictments against La Familia Nunca Muera. That means the family that never dies. Well, it looks like it died this week. The prosecutors used RICO, the racketeering statute, and they charged the entire enterprise as one organization. The whole network, from the leadership down to the shooters, were taken out in a single indictment. Boom number 3. The sitting governor of Sinaloa in Mexico, Ruben Rocha Moya. He was indicted by the Southern District of New York under the allegation that El Chapo's sons kidnapped Rocha Moya's political rivals to get him elected governor. In exchange, he gave the cartels free rein. Now, the United States is not just indicting drug traffickers. They're now indicting the political infrastructure that makes the cartel possible. And then the Mexican government itself moved. Mexico's own financial intelligence unit froze the bank accounts of Governor Rocha Moya, his children, and his senior aides. And at the same time, Mexico approved a new intelligence sharing arrangement. So the FBI, the DEA, ATF, Homeland Security, and Customs and Border Protection, all of them are now operating inside a Mexican state security building. FBI Director Kash Patel made clear, this is a result of an administration that is fighting a real war on all fronts.
When we take out Tren de Aragua's senior-most leader, we're helping the Colombians down south make sure they don't have one of the worst terrorists of the worst criminal terrorist organizations on the planet in their backyard anymore. And we're going to continue to extrapolate on their networks and arrest everyone and anyone that was involved with it. Kicking open this door that President Trump has done has allowed us to capture 8 of the most violent top 10 most wanted in the FBI's charts in 1 year.
So put it all together. Bessent tells Europe no excuses and targets London-based institutions. The White House cites Britain's Muslim Brotherhood as the source of all Islamic terrorism, and Dope Incorporated is being treated as the enemy combatant that it is. One target, and it isn't Iran. The target is the city of London and the irregular warfare apparatus that has run for 200 years. Promethean Action is doing more than just exposing this. We're building a movement that can actually defeat this empire. By understanding and backing President Trump's strategic and economic revolution, you can be part of this. So join us at Promethean Action as a supporting member or a contributor. The enemy that's been hiding in the shadows is now in the open. It's time to finish them off. This has been your midweek update. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter, PrometheanAction.com.
The Big Fat Mouth of Almighty God on Facebook, YouTube, and everybody else.